the DC universe, as most of us have seen, they've never really been able to figure out what way to go when it comes to actually creating their universe. Mainly, they've just been trailing behind Marvel, following them, copying them. That's generally the way DC and Warner Brothers have operated whenever it's come to superhero movies. They've just never quite been able to capture the same audience that Marvel once had. They don't have that anymore. And as we've seen since David Zaslav has come into power over at Warner Brothers, we've seen slight changes here and there that just point in the direction that things are going to get better, at least for DC. And I think if they really want to take this seriously and actually beat Marvel, you know, there's no better time than at the present, because Marvel, the MCU, is dying. That is just a fact at this point. It is dying because the quality is so subpar that most people are just apathetic towards it at this point. So it shouldn't be that hard a job to actually surpass Marvel, because as we've seen, they've been making changes like the axing of Batgirl. We've seen David Zaslav talk about the quality of the DC brand, at least when it comes to movies. I think comics, that's long gone at this point. And even just this weekend, they announced Henry Cavill coming back as Superman. I mean, you look at Marvel, what at the moment do they have to offer? They've got Black Panther 2. They don't have a Black Panther. Oh no, wait, it's going to be another girl version. You know, like they've done with a load of other characters at this point. So they've got that coming. I bet we're all chuffed for that. And they've also got Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Who's excited for that? I don't think anyone's excited for that. I've never even seen the sequel to it. Because I don't think anyone gives a shit about Ant-Man and the Wasp. And that pretty much goes for the rest of the MCU going forward. The only thing we have that I would have a lot of hope in is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. After that, I don't think Marvel have anything to offer anybody. They really don't. But it seems like, with DC at least, they seem to be taking steps to actually, drop the preachy bullshit. That's why Batgirl was dropped. And plus, it was probably an absolute disastrous movie. That's just what it was. And even with Henry Cavill, it looks as though they're going to be dropping Jar Jar Abrams pretty quickly. Because if they're bringing Henry Cavill back, they're not going to be bringing J.J. Abrams in for his Superman but black. So that's also going to get dropped. But what's quite interesting that just happened yesterday is James Gunn. They've now appointed him to run DC, like the whole studios, with also, I believe it's producer Peter Safran. So they've stolen him straight out of Marvel. I think this is a good thing. We'll have to see how it turns out. But I think just from it written on paper, it seems like a good idea. Because you'll notice the main difference between James Gunn and Kevin Feige. James Gunn is a creative, whereas Kevin Feige is nothing more than a producer, and it shows. It really does show. So I think this is a good idea for DC. But let's have a look at, what exactly will be happening. But they say big news from James Gunn to follow his next Marvel project. James Gunn has taken his services to DC and Warner Brothers in a bigger way than ever before. And I believe this is like a 4-year contract. The filmmaker will work alongside regular producing partner Peter Safran to jointly run a new studio unit called DC Studios, which replaces DC Films and will oversee much of Warner's DC-based films and TV, both live action and animated. The surprising news via The Hollywood Reporter comes after Warner Brothers Discovery has spent ages looking for someone to run its DC section since previous boss Walter Hamada, unhappy with developments under new CEO David Zaslav, decided to leave. Aiming to find an equivalent to Marvel's Kevin Feige, and as I pointed out, I don't think this is the equivalent to Kevin Feige. I think it's better than a Kevin Feige. I think having James Gunn, an actual creative that, as we've seen with most of his movies, may not put out the bestest movies, but they've always got something there that, you still watch them again. Whether it is with Guardians of the Galaxy or even the recent Suicide Squad, which probably is one of the best DC films to come out probably, it's hard to say with DC. Because there's been that many terrible ones, but the Suicide Squad was pretty good. Not the bestest of plots, but it had characters. It had something to actually entice you through the door. And I think having someone like that to run the studios is just a good idea, to actually have a creative. But this is something that has needed to happen for a long time. I think with Henry Cavill coming back, I would just start the whole DC universe again. I would just start with, Superman's first movie. Don't need to make it an origin story, but I would just start off from, whether it's Superman or Batman, I would just start off from there and slowly, build up the universe, make sure you got a good plan. And I think with having a creative there, that may be possible. Again, we're going to have to see how it turns out, but on paper, seems like a good idea to me. There were feelers out to various filmmakers and producer Dan Lin, who has worked extensively for Warner's, yet despite talks, Dan ultimately opted to stay with his own production company. Gunn and Safran have been spotted talking with Warner Brothers film bosses Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdi, though then it was put down to Gunn pitching new potential movies. Turns out the studio was doing the pitching of a job that will see them reporting to the CEO, DeLuca and Abdi, and shepherding the vast majority of DC's movie and TV output. Outliers at this point, Todd Phillips' Joker sequel, and I believe Todd Phillips was looked at for this job as well, and that would have been probably a decent idea as well, which is silo from the DCEU and won't be overseen by the new duo. Less known is whether Matt Reeves' expanding the Batman universe will also fall under the purview. With that, it seems like they're just gonna have their own little corner when it comes to the Matt Reeves stuff. They've got like the Penguin series and all that coming, so I can only imagine that's probably going to be outside. Of course, it's outside of the actual DCEU. Gunn, of course, needs little introduction and has created the likes of the Suicide Squad and small screen spin-off Peacemaker for DC. While Safran is a manager turned producer who has the likes of the Conjuring franchise, Gunn's DC work and James Wan's Aquaman movies on his CV, Gunn will reportedly handle most of the creative decisions. So that's why I say it's good to have an actual creative, because Kevin Feige hasn't got a creative bone in his body. We've seen that throughout the whole of Phase 4. And there's no way it's changing. No way it's changing. As most of us have said, whenever it comes to, the party of change, Disney's going to be the last of that party. So Marvel probably going to go down the toilet at some point. Already in the toilet. It's just waiting for someone to flush it. And I think if DC actually managed to surpass Marvel, that's going to happen. It's going to happen. Then it's going to be down to Marvel if they change or not. But, I'm very doubtful on that. With Safran handling the business side of producing a new output. So it seems like they're actually trying to take this a bit more seriously. And as I've said, with all the decisions we've seen Zaslav making, it all just seems like it's going in a better direction. Unless you worry that this means Gunn is getting out of filmmaking to sit in an office all day, as part of his 4-year initial DC exclusive deal, he'll still be making movies and TV shows, just also handling executive decisions around other films and filmmakers. Given how well his work has generally turned out, we're optimistic about this new direction. I'm really surprised the mainstream media are behind it. Because ever since the Axe and a Batgirl, the usual suspects have been all upset about it. DC has among the most entertaining, powerful, and iconic characters in the world, and I'm thrilled to have the singular and complementary talents of James and Peter joining our world-class team and overseeing the creative direction of the storied DC universe. Their decades of experience in filmmaking, and that's another key, they have experience. They have experience as well. Close ties to the creative community and proven track record, thrilling superhero fans around the globe make them uniquely qualified to develop a long-term strategy across film, TV, and animation, and take this iconic franchise to the next level of creative storytelling. We're honoured to be the stewards of these DC characters we've loved since we were children, We look forward to collaborating with the most talented writers, directors, and actors. Again, another way to surpass Marvel. Just make sure you're hiring people that know what they're doing. You look at Marvel, most of these people barely got anything under their belts, and you wonder why it turns out so trash. So, you know, as I say, if DC actually want to shit all over Marvel rather than it being the opposite way around, there's no better time than now. It wouldn't even take that much effort. Even just with Black Adam, that's 100 times better than anything fucking Marvel's done. Even though the film's essentially just action, action, action. It really doesn't take much effort to beat them at the moment. And actors in the world to create an integrated, multi-layered universe that still allows for the individual expression of the artists involved. And it's, again, just making sure there's communication. That's been the main issue when it comes to DCs. You've got one person over here doing something, another person, and none of them are talking to each other. So that's why everything hasn't really seemed like it's kept in within an actual universe, within an actual timeline. It's just been kind of, you know, all over the place. Our commitment to Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Harley Quinn, and the rest of the... I would just drop Harley Quinn at this point. Really. And the rest of the DC stable of characters is only equaled by our commitment to the wonder of human possibility these characters represent. We're excited to invigorate the theatrical experience around the world as we tell some of the biggest, most beautiful and grandest stories ever told. So, you know, it's, as I say, it seems like a good move to me. We're going to have to see how it pans out. But so far, just from what I'm seeing, you know, again, they're getting an actual creative to you know, head the studio. And it's just something that makes sense. Again, you just have to parallel it with current Marvel. You have a Kevin Feige that doesn't make any good decisions. Lets people do whatever. Doesn't really think about it. So you need an actual creative that is trying to flesh out an entire universe. And we'll see how it works out. But so far, just as I say, on paper, I think James Gunn is probably a good choice.